for game week 24, I told you to consider Bruno Fernandes, Pedro as captaincy choices, and they all gave massive returns for game week 24. Heading into game week 25, I'm going to recommend these players that you should have them as captains and also have them in your team, as they would provide massive returns for you for the game week. Before we do head into it, I would like to kindly hit that subscribe button, like, share. Let's get interactive. So as I said, game week 25 is almost upon us. Before we do get into it, I would like us to just look at the fixtures, after which we'll go through a few stats. Then I'm going to give you some players you should most definitely look at having into your team for game week 25, and some other players you could also consider if you feel you want to have a differential. Then we'll look at some captaincy choices. So for the fixtures, we have the first fixture being on Friday, that is against Leeds United against Nottingham Forest. Then on Saturday we have Manchester United, they take on Spurs. We have Arsenal taking on Sunderland. We have Bournemouth v Aston Villa. We have Burnley v West Ham. We have Fulham v Everton. We have Wolves against Chelsea. We have Newcastle, they take on Brentford. Then on Sunday we have two games. We have Brighton Hove Albion, they take on Crystal Palace. We have Liverpool against City. So the biggest matches for the round, we have Manchester, they take on Spurs, and we also have Liverpool v City. So it's going to be very interesting. And some matches you could most definitely consider having players from. You should be looking at the Leeds United match. As Leeds play at home, I'm expecting Calvin Lewin to provide some few good returns for managers. So you could consider him if you want a differential too. You could look at Anderson or Morgan Gibbs White from Nottingham Forest, as they would be the most likely candidates to give some good returns. For the Spurs Manchester United match too, you can consider some players from there. Manchester United have been in good form, so most definitely you could consider an Mbuemo, Bruno Fernandes, or even a Cunha as a differential. So the Arsenal Sunderland match, most definitely, if you are really struggling who to get, you could just go for defenders. You could consider a Timber as a differential. You could consider Gabriel as your main choice. You could also be looking at Declan Rice. That is if you want something totally out of order. For the forward, Saka he's mad, and it's been a while since he's provided massive returns for managers. So you'd want to be very strategic with him. Then you could also consider a differential from the Aston Villa match, where you could be looking at either players from either teams. It should be good to go. For the Burnley match, I would be looking at Jared Baldwin, as he's been very, very good of late. So you could consider him. Fulham Everton, you could be consider Wilson, or you could also consider Indaya from Everton. Very good choices, but it could go either way. So you'd want to be very pragmatic with your selection or choice. Then Chelsea Wolves, consider a player from this fixture as well. I would want to skip the Newcastle Bedford. I'm not too sure about them. Crystal Palace Burnley, Crystal Palace Brighton. So I want to skip them. But I could have some few differentials. It's not bad. It's good to have differentials. Then the City Liverpool match, a player from each team won't be a bad idea, as I believe this fixture is going to be a match of so many goals from both halves. So that's how it's looking for the fixtures. So heading into the player stats, let's look at what most managers are thinking heading into the game week. So that for the most selected, we have Haaland still leading the charts. You have Semenyo in the mix. You have Gabriel and quite a few others. So if you look at the most selected, you could easily make your first 11 from there, and you'll be good to go. So you should most definitely have some players from the most selected. You look at the ICT rating too, very important. So compared to the most selected, you would have a very good selection to pick who not to also consider. So these players are players with very high ICT ratings, so you could also consider them. So heading into the game week, the most transferred in. We have Joao Pedro leading the chart after some good run over the past few game weeks. Most managers are expecting him to also consider with continue with this match. So we are hoping for the best. You have Bruno Fernandes, you have Enzo, you have Higo, you have Vert, you have Mbuebo. So quite a list, quite some good players in there. So you could look at all these players and most definitely try to avoid players from this category. So you have Saka, you have Bruno Gamarez, they've all been highlighted. So it's 50-50 whether they are going to start. So you want to be very cautious with that. Thiago as well, he's not really been in good form. Foden, Watkins. Has also been flagged, so you'd also want to look at that. Dogo is out for a while, so you would want to also see that. So we went through the FDL in my previous video. If you missed that, kindly go back game week 24 post analysis. You see there we explained a few things. See how the fixtures are looking heading into the game weeks. It helps you if you decide to use a wild card. You want to go to your FDL. I talk about it a lot in my previous videos, so you want to go through it. Make sure you get some good selection from the FDL. See how things are looking heading into the game week. See how a few things are looking in heading into the subsequent game weeks. The FDL should give you a very good choice of what you'd be looking out for. So that is one important thing to always look out for, the FDL. When it comes to some players you should have, as I've said, I mentioned a few teams, but I'm looking at players like Calvin Lewin. I'm looking at, if you don't have Gabriel, go for him. He's a good option. Declan Rice has a very good differential. You should also consider having Mbuebo. If you feel you want someone on set pieces, you could go for Bruno. So Bruno as number one, then you could have Mbuebo as a differential. Jao, then Baldwin too will also be a good option as he's in the mix when it comes to goals and assists. So you could most definitely be looking at him. Then Joao Pedro has a good differential when it comes to your attacking. You have Palmer. I believe Palmer has missed a few minutes over the past few game weeks, but heading into this game week, I believe he should start and he's going to give some good returns. Estavao too has a good option. You could have him as a differential too. Very solid. Then Wilson too has a differential. So you'll be looking at these players for differentials and you should be good to go. So when it comes to captaincy, I'm looking at Bruno, I'm looking at Baldwin for my main choice. So you most definitely have Baldwin, have Bruno as your number one choice. Consider them for captaincy. That is if you are really not certain who to go for. And for differentials, I'll be looking at Palmer. I'll also be looking at Rogers. So there's differential. There's if you want to really go all different for most managers, can be looking at Palmer. You could be looking at Rogers, and I believe these players are going to give very good starts or returns for most managers. So there's my team for game week 25. I have the likes of Tarkowski, Timber, Van Heke. I have Raya, I have Mbuebo, Rice, Semenyo, Wilson. I'm still stuck with Haaland, so I'm still sticking with Haaland. I have Joao Pedro. I brought in Baldwin, so I have Rogers, even though he's a differential captain, I have him on the bench, still contemplating as to how to balance it, whether Rogers for Wilson. So let's see how it goes. But it's favoring Wilson, so that is how it's looking for that. So this is my team for the game week. I hope for massive returns for most managers. So kindly leave a comment. Let me know how you're also setting up heading into the game week, who you decide to captain. I hope for greens for all. We are out. Subscribe.